Hello, my name is Zachary Hartley Dawson. Today I'm going to be doing a presentation on my self-directed learning project entitled Learning About Privilege. So this particular activity is meant for secondary 2 students in cycle 2 of the Ethics and Religious Culture program, during which in this particular cycle, students cover the theme of tolerance. And the game itself is a kind of adaptation of a regular questionnaire game. So getting into it, students press this flag here and press S to start. Students are first made to choose a character that best represents themselves through a variety of models by pressing C. In this instance, it doesn't really matter which one I pick. They're then introduced to the characters they will be undertaking the activity with, who represent a wide variety of backgrounds in terms of race, gender, and class, which is important for the questions later on. Students are then introduced to the controls of the game, being Y and N, which represent simple yes and no responses to the questions presented later on. They're also given a little introduction to the nature of the questions themselves. So finally, we get to the focus of the game, the questionnaire. Here, students represented by the student participating, represented by the character furthest to the back, give their response to the questions above, which are related to situations and experiences in which privilege plays a factor in whether or not the student can relate to them. So depending on the student's response, they move forward if their response is a sign of privilege, and they stay put if their response means the opposite. To demonstrate the amount of questions I have here, I'm going to just keep running through them. And there you go. So clicking S. In terms of learning goal, the primary purpose of this activity is to help secondary students start to understand the concept of privilege, and that for most of us, for intersecting reasons such as race, class, and gender, have more or less of it. The analogy of comparing it to a walk in which some students are ahead of others is intended to serve as a visual representation of how certain students benefit from the advantages privilege bestows upon them. This then connects with the progressions of learning, D1 and D9, where the student is expected to develop an understanding of tolerance-related terminology, such as privilege, while also relating it to the recognition of others, which the student does in this case by seeing how the other students themselves, in that race earlier, relate to privilege and compare to the player's own progress. So how this SDL engages with Bloom's taxonomy is through first understanding by having students take part in a personal experience that builds upon and further demonstrates to them how privilege exists within their own lives and the lives of others. Additionally, remembrance also plays a part, as students have to be able to recall the concept of privilege itself while playing through the game. In terms of SAMR, this game is a digital augmentation of a in-person game titled Privilege War. So what makes this augmentation in particular is that in the in-person game, there is the issue, while it is very similar to this one, there is the issue that with a group of students participating, those who lie on the furthest ahead or furthest back may feel separated from the group, and as a result may feel left out and may be ashamed of how much privilege or the lack of privilege that they have. And so bringing this over into an individual internet context, it gets rid of that issue by having the student be able to go through this process on their own and share if they really want to. So that being said, we'll go over to the last slide. It's just a reminder to be tolerant of the difficulties others face, further tying it into that overarching theme. So now to look inside of the coding, I'll give a brief overview of each character's coding here. There we go. Very simple for the most part. And then we have the much more complex backdrop coding here. And so initially, after watching a few introductory videos on Scratch, I was able to set up all the slides you see before you, which I showed earlier, and code in-character movement and slide transitions. However, there soon became apparent an issue. The way I had the coding set up, where pressing Y necessarily moved your character forward, meant that pressing Y had to be, in every case, an affirmation of privilege, and thus a negation of it. Although functional, it essentially meant that all questions had to be formatted to present the yes option as being privileged. With this in mind, and me and my stepbrother brainstormed how to get past this and decided instead to tie the question about what yes or no meant to the slides themselves rather than the character. So as we can see here, When Y is pressed, it runs first through the particular slide that you're on, and thus the question. And depending on the particular slide your character is on, depending on what yes should mean, an affirmation or denial of privilege on that slide, a move or stay put signal is then sent to your character. As you can see here, move, you can change it depending on the nature of the question, therefore making it so that yes can be either an affirmation or a denial depending on the slide. So that being said, I feel like I've covered all there is to cover, and I wish you a good time grading. Thank you.